and old men to appeal to a much younger audience and loads more women.
We've got our Guinness here.
Oh, yeah.
Cheers to you.
Cheers.
I'm not sure about this boozing on air at this time of the morning, but I'll let you off on this occasion.
As it's you, Tim, as it's you. Now, Guinness is an acquired taste for many people, so I'm surprised it's become so popular.
Yes, it is a real surprise. I think it's always been a popular drink among the demographic you mentioned, the older guy. There's about 80 or 90% of pub trade over the last 30 or 40 years, and probably longer, are a similar range of products. But there's a varying 10, 20% according to fashion. You had vodka Red Bull 20 years ago. You had an Irish cider poured over ice, which came from no one knows where. You had Alco Pops. So there's an unpredictable range of products which have been the fashion of the moment. But the fashion of the moment, very unpredictably this time, is Guinness. And no one knows why. As you say, it's an acquired taste. Young people tend not to like it. Most of the fashionable drinks over the decades have been quite sweet. And Guinness obviously isn't. So, yes, I think the Guinness brewery, St James's Gate in Dublin, they'll say it's brilliant marketing. But like the rest of us, they rely a bit on luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good evening to you. You're watching and listening to GB News. I'm Sam Francis. A look at the headlines at 11 o'clock. The bodies of 3 people who were kidnapped by Hamas from a music festival on October the 7th have been found by the Israeli military in Gaza. The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed the 3 bodies were discovered overnight from intelligence gained by interviewing captured Hamas fighters. Among the 3 hostages was 22-year-old Shani Locke, whose twisted remains were photographed on the back of a pickup truck. Israel says that about 100 hostages may still be alive, while another 30 are thought to be dead. Meanwhile, a terrorist who stabbed a stranger to death in an attack motivated by the conflict in Gaza will spend at least 44 years in prison. Ahmed Ali Alid had already tried to kill his housemate before roaming the streets of Hartlepool and repeatedly stabbing grandfather Terence Carney last October. The 45-year-old is an asylum seeker who claimed to be from Morocco. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says his conviction exposes what she's called an alarming catalogue of failings in the Home Office's handling of his asylum claim. A teacher convicted of having sex with 2 schoolboys, becoming pregnant by one of them, has been described by a judge today as a predator. Rebecca Jones was found guilty of 6 counts of engaging in sexual activity with a child. She denied having sex with one schoolboy and claimed a relationship with a second teenager began only once he had left school and after she had been sacked. During her 2-week trial, the high school teacher told the court that she craved attention and was flattered by the teenagers. The 30-year-old will be sentenced in July. Well, there's still no word tonight on how long residents in South Devon will have to boil their water after a parasite got into supplies following possible contamination from cow manure. There are now 46 confirmed cases of Cryptosporidium, according to health officials. It means that cases of the diarrhoea-inducing bug have more than doubled in less than 24 hours. More than 100 people have also reported symptoms. And the King, the Queen and Prince William will attend ceremonies in France next month to mark the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings. His Majesty and Queen Camilla will join a commemorative event at the British Normandy Memorial, while the Prince of Wales will attend a separate Canadian ceremony. Buckingham Palace, though, says the Princess of Wales is not expected to travel to France. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, it's time for Headliners.
Thank you, Sam. Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Saturday's top stories. Joining me tonight are two delightful comedians, Frida Kahlo fan Cressida Wetton and Frida Nipple fan Nicholas DeSanto. How are you both doing?
I am not a big Frida Kahlo fan.
Right.
I'm not a fan, although I think the tote bags can be a bit irritating.
Is she the woman with the monobrow?
Yes, she is.
The sort of Noel Gallagher?
Yes, she was an early Oasis fan. I think that was her thing.
Yeah, and she's just famous for having a big eyebrow, Nicholas.
Yeah, that's all she did.
Yeah, well, I don't want to disparage her art, but not a fan, but I'm not a fan of Free the Nipple movement.
OK, well, it's Friday night. Anyway, let's have a look at Saturday's front pages. The Daily Mail leads with Hunt warns families face £2,100 bill to pay for Labour spending. The Telegraph has landlords face rent caps under Labour. We're going to cover that in a moment. The Guardian has revealed alcohol abuse costs soar to £27 billion a year. The Times has protectionism for teachers' free speech on religion. The iNews has benefit system insiders reveal how targets are used to decide disability claims. And finally, the Daily Star has very, very hungry caterpillars go on the rampage. And those were your front pages. And let's have a closer look at those front pages, starting with the Times, Cressida. What have they got on the cover?
They've got protection for teachers' free speech on religion, push for change after protests and death threats. So this is a new report from Lord Walney, who is the government's advisor on political violence and disruption, and he's suggesting new guidance for schools. Teachers will be given protection from claims of blasphemy by religious groups under proposals set out in this report. Which is all well and good. This is coming off the back of what happened at Batley Grammar School. A child scuffed a Quran and then lots of parents protested, said death threats. I believe the teacher...
That was a separate... That was the Wakefield incident. There's been a few incidents. So the Batley Grammar teacher, I believe he showed... Did he show a cartoon or something?
Is he the Muhammad? Right.
Yeah, and the wrong Muhammad. It's the prophet. So, and that's obviously, a lot of people go nuts if you do that. So he had to go into hiding, and he's still, 3 years on, he's still in hiding.
With his family.
With his family, yeah.
Which might make you think, well, this is a great idea, but I have to say, did we need new guidance, or could the old laws in place have been used to stop what's already happened?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was never OK to treat teachers like that.
Yeah, but, I mean, if all it takes is new legislation, well, so be it. So this is an independent review commissioned by the government, and in the recommendations they have emphasized the fact for this to become statutory, so teachers can have legal protection against such threats and mistreatment.
But do you think legislation can actually deal with this issue? Because, I mean, I don't think those mobs of Islamists baying for a teacher's blood are going to be like, oh, wait a minute, we're breaking the law doing this.
Well, that is my fear. Personally, if I were a teacher, I don't think I would be any more inclined to show a cartoon of Muhammad after this report than before it.
Maybe a better solution would be to arm teachers with AK-47s.
Well, I am pro Second Amendment, pro gun. Obviously, in this country, it's still a dream. But I've always said that, yes, let's deal with the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is when you open the borders and you bring in millions of people who have totally diverse values and modus operandi.
Yeah.
And then there we are.
And we've got a picture of the Mohammed... Oh, no, we don't. Anyway, moving on, let's have a look at The Guardian. Apparently, alcohol abuse is costing England £27 billion a year. I mean, in fairness, that's the price of 2 rounds in London, Nicholas.
Yeah, tell me about it. Not that I'm a big consumer of alcohol. I'm very Mediterranean in my consumption. But revealed, alcohol abuse costs soar to £27 billion a year. So this cost basically encompasses a variety of aspects, from health-related problems, so the cost on the NHS, lack of productivity, people who lose their jobs, social services, and all that. And, of course, it has been on the rise, 37% more compared to last time this was studied in 2003. So now Institute of Alcohol Studies and some other groups are pushing or asking for tougher taxes and tougher regulation. But is that the solution? That's the dilemma. If people are libertarian or people are for personal responsibility, like in ancient Rome, they said, in medium stat virtus, like moderation, virtue is in moderation. And again, if they're going to raise the price, people like myself or yourself who are moderate consumers, pardon?
You're going to turn to heroin. Because it'll become... I mean, well, this is what's happened in Scotland.
It becomes unaffordable, so...
Yeah, in Scotland, they had minimum unit alcohol pricing, and so it pushes up the cost of getting off your tree for your average Scottish ne'er-do-well who likes to sit on a bus stop and drink a bottle of cider. So instead, they're turning to street drugs, which are cheaper by comparison.
That is just terrible. I like that the alcohol industry have come back on this. A guy called Matt Lambert, who's the chief executive of the Portman Group, and they represent the alcohol industry. And he says that the IAS, that's the group who've created this, have failed to take into account the significant direct economic contribution of the alcohol industry to the wider economic and social benefits of moderate and responsible alcohol consumption. Well, it's so true, isn't it? We've got a declining birth rate. We need people to get drunk and chat each other up. I'd be very sad if we drank even less.
So do you think we need to prescribe young people alcohol to get them to...
Well, for some people, it's a lubricant, isn't it? That's all I'm saying.
Although, if you are planning on having sex, please do not use alcohol as a lubricant.
The culture of, you know, if you don't consume too much, if you don't get drunk, you know, I don't want to use... coarse language, but, you know, binge drinking, and you are less of a man if you don't have shot after shot. That needs to be tackled because it's not masculine.
Yeah, just have the shot. What are you? What are you, not a man?
I like how they've pointed out here
that's a great point.
that the average cost per head of alcohol harm in the UK is £485 a year, rising to £562 if you live in the North East. It specifically says that.
And that's interesting because, you know, the North East is generally less economically productive than the South. So, you know, it's
they must be really earning it.
And lockdown, of course, had a huge impact on alcoholism in the UK because people were locked inside next to the fridge, which had a bottle of Chablis inside it.
And saw their business disappear, you know, domestic abuse, their livelihoods, and all the, you know, other opportunities for socialization were taken away from them. So that was their only joy left.
They just had Tiger King and alcohol. A terrible policy. Moving on to the Telegraph now, Cresta. What have they got in the cover?
Landlords face rent caps under Labour. Boo. Rachel Reeves says there may be a case for allowing councils to set local limits. So she wants this to be local. So the measure would mean local authorities could prevent landlords from raising rents above a set proportion every year. A similar policy introduced in Scotland by Nicola Sturgeon drove landlords out of the market, reduced the supply of housing and forced up rents.
Yeah, everything. I mean, it's interesting. Economists never agree on anything, but they all agree that rent caps are an absolutely atrocious policy. If you want to increase the amount of housing and if you want to lower the price of housing, you don't introduce onerous rules and make it more difficult to be a landlord. That all the costs, all the burdens that get put on landlords are passed on to the tenants, Nicholas.
Exactly. I mean, this is... I know you are a fan of this sentence. Hello, I'm from the government and I've come here to help, famously said by
Well, he's not
Reagan,
a fan. He thinks it's the terrifying...
The most terrifying
well, Ronald Reagan said that's the most terrifying sentence in the English language. The government can never help. It can only get in the way and makes things worse.
At least in this area. They have tried it in Scotland. It has miserably failed. We discussed that.
Yeah, so we were already miserable. We don't need extra misery.
Exactly. And now they want to try it in England, obviously making it unaffordable or... basically making it more and more difficult and a hassle for landlords. So the landlord says, you know what, I'm going to sell up. So there's going to be even less rent stock for potential renters. So it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, a no-brainer, which pretty much describes all Labour's economic policy. Although, I mean, the Tories, under the Tories, the sort of burden on landlords, they can't claim tax relief on mortgage payments. You know, it's become much more difficult to be an independent landlord. And a lot of landlords have been selling up. And consequently, you know, especially in London, we've seen rents go up as well. And it sort of feels like it's a push to allow corporations and banks to come in and own that section of the housing market, own the rental section.
or investors from overseas.
Right, yeah, great point.
OK, well, moving on, let's end this section with the Daily Star, Nicholas.
So again, we have something from the boffins, this time insect boffins. Gutsy wrigglers slowly running amok in gardens. Very, very hungry caterpillars go on the rampage. So this looks like a children's story gone terribly wrong. The Royal Horticultural Society has warned that we have this new, maybe mutant version of the usual caterpillar who's chomping off leaves and greenery even faster. They've warned people across the length and breadth of Britain. They say go for pheromone traps to detect the moths when they arrive and basically protect your... I was already struggling against snails and slugs. Now it looks like...
Are you a gardener, Nicholas?
I'm not good at it, but, but I have a garden.
It's not going to help, is it?
Do you grow food?
My wife, being vegetarian, I'm into flowers, like for the visual, you know.
Yeah, I know what flowers are. You don't eat flowers.
No, because we have limited land and we constantly are fighting because she wants to be more pragmatic.
Right.
And I know it's a red-pilled thing to actually grow your own food. So I'm leaning towards that, but I like my flowers.
I like to leave it to the farmers, you know. They can grow a lot more at a much greater scale.
Yeah, and farmers need all the support they can get. Well, we know what the net zero and the green agenda is doing to the farmers, so yeah, we can't leave it to them.
Yeah. OK, well, look out for those caterpillars. That's the front pages out of the way, but join us in a couple of minutes for the most anti-immigration government in Europe. It's not Britain's, and a lot of disseminated toxic waste, and that's not Owen Jones's Twitter output. See you in a couple of minutes.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first-language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him to go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling them that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
so,
you know,
Gareth,
speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm
you know what? If I was Welsh, if I were Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Leo Carson. Still with me are Cressida Wetton and Nicholas DeSanto. And we're hosting a night with the Headliners live. You can join us for an evening of comedy with Andrew Doyle, Simon Evans, Josh Howie and myself. For more information, scan the QR code on your TV right now. If you're listening on radio, don't try and scan the radio. It won't work. Or you can visit gbnews.com for more information about how you can get into this gig. I'll be scanning that later to find out how I get in. We've got the Times now with the IDF making a grim discovery in Gaza. Nicholas.
Bodies of Shani Luke and 2 other hostages recovered from Gaza. Of course, a sad story. Shani Luke became tragically an iconic symbol and emblem of this vicious attack, October 7th, because she was killed in this Nova Music Festival.
Yeah. And she wasn't just killed, I mean, she was obviously, you know, horrific.
Exactly, and that's how she became the emblem of the whole attack, because her body was paraded on the back of a van in Gaza, and she was killed on the spot. And again, on the back of Eurovision Festival, where the Israeli participant got so much grief from the elite national juries and support from the actual national voters. This is even more significant because it reminds us what sort of people we are dealing with. What makes this sadder is that the other 2 bodies that were found, there were hopes that they were still alive, but turns out they were also killed. And this is very tragic because right now there are tens of hostages still in captivity. Israelis estimate that up to 40 of them might have been killed. In fact, when they are doing these negotiations for ceasefire in exchange for release of hostages, Israel says, how about releasing all the hostages? And Hamas says, how about we give you this number of bodies?
Right.
You know, and it's so sad that this is the time when Biden administration, fearful of not winning the vote of Arabs and Muslims in Michigan in the upcoming election, is putting pressure on Israel not to finish the job. And of course, this story reminds us, if they don't finish the job, what sort of people we are actually dealing with.
It's interesting you mentioned Biden because we've seen in the West, there's, you know, Biden is dependent on votes from certain minority communities and also from young woke Westerners, and those are people who generally either gloss over or openly support and celebrate the Hamas attacks that Shani Luke died in. And I mean, I just think it's insane that we've allowed a generation to grow up with, you know, poisonous critical race theory, all these ideas of decolonization and white supremacy, and you know, they call Israel an apartheid state. Apparently, apartheid is when you build a fence so people can't behead you.
I feel like that most of those young people, it's hard for me to understand why they don't identify with Shani Luke. You know, young woman at a festival doing what she likes, which is really what they're doing when they're at these protests. You know, they're living in a very Western way. And I just find that utterly bizarre. And so the more this goes on, you know, it mentions in here that the Israeli Defence Minister is growing increasingly frustrated that there's still not yet a governance plan for Gaza sort of going forward. And I think we all feel like that, don't we? It's like, what's going to happen long term?
This is a very eloquent case of how intersectionality can go wrong or short-circuit. Because in this Premier League of victimhood that the intersectionists have created, the brown man, the Muslim man, the Hamas terrorist who is anti-imperialist and anti-American, anti-Western, anti-Christian, gets such a high score of victimhood that these are happily ready to sacrifice Shani Luke, the women who were at the music festival, or, you know, we have queers for Hamas, gays for Palestine. They're happy to sacrifice all those other groups of victims because Hamas scores a bigger score in terms of victimhood. Because ultimately, their goal of destroying the West takes precedence over their goal of caring about LGBT in Palestine or women in the Middle East and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got The Independent now reporting on the Sunday Times rich list, and it turns out that Paul Marshall, the GB News owner, is one of the most charitable men in Britain. I guess employing us could be seen as charity, Cressida.
Sir Elton John and Sir Paul Marshall among most generous on the 2024 rich list. So the 100 most philanthropic philanthropic people in the UK rich list, including Elton John and hedge fund managers, gave a total of £3.2 billion this year. That's a lot, isn't it? Now it's going to get a bit distasteful because we're going to talk specifically about somebody's money. Hedge fund manager Sir Paul Marshall, who was knighted in 2016 for his charity work, secured the top spot in the Sunday Times giving list for giving the highest proportion of his fortune away. So he's worth apparently £875 million, and he's donated £145.1 million in the last 12 months. Elton John gets a mention as well. He gave away 5.7% of his £470 million fortune this year.
Wow.
So they're good guys. And not just because I'm connected to Paul Marshall.
Yeah. And well, it's not mentioned in this article, but I was surprised to see that there's a new entry to the Sunday Times rich list. Graham King, an Essex businessman who runs the accommodation that asylum seekers are housed in.
Wow.
And he's made so much money, so it's £3.5 million a day from the government, obviously, so from the taxpayer. So £3.5 million a day, and he is now on the rich list with a net worth of £750 million. So it's good that, you know, some people are getting rich from the asylum disaster.
Well, so many people on the right have been saying this for a long time. Illegal immigration and mass immigration is big business.
Yeah.
A huge army of NGOs and legal studios on legal aid. You know, I was an interpreter myself, so I'm guilty as well. But if I don't interpret, who would? You know, people who encourage, you know, all these ships and all these boats and millionaires and hotels who host them. This is quite disconcerting. And something else that is alarming is that Sir Paul Marshall, among other charitable donations, he has given £50 million to LSE, London School of Economics.
Yeah.
Admittedly, a prestigious university known all over the world.
A very woke institution.
But if the outcome is anything similar to the encampments we are seeing in US universities, it's a cause for alarm.
Yeah, and Cressler,
some money well spent.
Some people are demanding that there should be a systemic overhaul in the way the most wealthy are taxed. They're saying we should tax wealthy people instead of, you know, waiting for them to donate to things. I mean, I think that's ridiculous because wealthy people obviously know what to do with their money. That's how they got rich. So they're much better allocating their money than some disinterested government apparatchik is going to be.
I tend to agree, Leo. And what would happen if all their money was taken away? They might not make it again next year. So we're all a bit... Probably you agree as well, don't you?
Yeah. And personally, you know, I don't believe in charity anyway because I just don't believe in helping people. Anyway, we've got the Mail now, and 6 months after his surprise win in the Dutch elections, Geert Wilders has finally been allowed to form a government, and it's going to have Europe's strictest asylum policy, Nicholas.
This is finally some good news, more than good news. A Dutch politician, well, the Dutch pronounce it Geert, so I'm going to do that because I did some mini exchange in the Netherlands. Geert Wilders, or Wilders, abandons plans for Nexit, that is the exit of the Netherlands from the EU, and Quran ban to seal strictest ever asylum policy that will see Netherlands opt out of EU rules.
So these were two. He compromised on Nexit and he compromised on the Quran ban to get the other policy through, which
and I
is
think
a strict
it's a sensible
asylum
move. It's a sensible move. The negotiations have been going on for 6 months. Would you believe it? After he scored this historic victory, almost a quarter of the votes, his Freedom Party won that. But all these lefties and so-called proponents and defenders of democracy, when they lose, they boycott you. And this is what we've been seeing elsewhere as well. In Germany, for example, you have Alternative for Deutschland, AfD and so on. So by blocking and by not cooperating, they were hoping that he would not make it. But now this coalition of 4 parties have reached an agreement. They said, OK, Nexit and the Quran ban, more unattainable.
Yeah.
He has even abandoned his aspirations for becoming a prime minister at this stage, but they are going to form this government and they're going to implement these strict immigration policies.
And Cressler and Nicholas raises the interesting point that they treated Geert Wilders' win in a very anti-democratic way. I mean, he won a huge mandate. He won more than 23% of the vote, which is huge in a proportional representation system, and 37 of the Dutch Parliament's 150 seats. So the electorate, a big swathe of the electorate, wanted his ideas, and he ran on this, you know, this platform of these quite, you know, hardline, or they're seen as hardline. They probably won't be in a few years.
Well,
And they tried to stymie him. They tried to stop him getting into government.
You know the rules. You can't be a populist, but it has to be democratic. Which is it? We don't know.
But also, I mean, people describe him as a populist. I mean, populists tell people what they want to hear. They say things like, oh, we're going to introduce rent caps. Socialists are populists. Geert Wilders is a visionary who sees where the world is going.
Very good point. So, do you think all this, because obviously we're talking about it now, this is making it look a lot less attractive to potential immigrants, right? So this is like his own little Rwanda thing in that it's... it reminds me of in a house, you know, the police always say, make sure your house is secure, and as long as yours is a bit more secure than the one next door, you haven't really got to worry, have you? He's kind of doing that.
Well, that's kind of what happened with Britain when we looked like the Rwanda plan was actually going to start working. A lot of asylum seekers or illegal immigrants fled to Ireland because, you know, so yeah, if you make your country more secure. But yeah, I think this is kind of like breaking the seal on the whole notion. We've seen, you know, as with Britain with the Rwanda plan, 19 European countries now want to copy Britain's Rwanda plan. So we're seeing with this, I think other European countries, now that one country has broken the seal and stepped out first, other countries will be like, yeah, you know what, we'll have some of that.
It's like it's PE and everyone's getting a doctor's note and nobody wants to do it.
Yeah. Well, we've got the Mail again, and the Government Nuclear Waste Department has taken the advice of debt management companies and consolidating all its nuclear waste into one manageable lump sum, Cressida.
UK government reveals plans to bury up to 5 million tonnes of nuclear waste in a 650-foot pit in the English countryside within the next 10 years. So that sounds nice. But apparently, nobody wants it near them. Shock. So we don't know where it's going to be yet. New plans show that a near-surface facility, so that means less than sort of 200 metres below the surface, could be used to hold some of the UK's less dangerous nuclear waste. But I think most people, when they're thinking about where they live, they want no nuclear waste, don't they? That's the amount we like the sound of.
Yeah, but nuclear waste is much safer than it used to be. It's not like Chernobyl when, you know, it would erupt in a big fission reaction.
Yeah, ultimately it's about, because technology has evolved, and if you handle it first, at the end of the day, we need to make a decision. We can't have our cake and eat it. We don't want to be depending on Russian gas. We also want to go for net zero, but we also want to, scoff at nuclear energy. So which is it going to be?
And also, coal power releases more radiation into the environment than nuclear power, like vastly more radiation, because there's, I mean, obviously it's much more dilute, but there are radioactive isotopes in coal. When it's burnt, they're released into the atmosphere and settle around the world. Radiation, the amount of radiation that an average person absorbs from nuclear energy is equivalent to eating one banana a year. Which, I mean, I don't know if you panic when you eat a banana, but, you know, I mean, as long as nobody's watching when I'm eating it. Anyway, that's it for part two. Join us in a moment for a real-life Frankenstein, Eddie Izzard's promise to women, and is Mohammed the most popular name in Britain? Find out in a couple of minutes.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Plenty of warm, sunny spells this weekend, but it won't be sunny or indeed dry everywhere. There'll be some cloud development, there'll be some showers here and there. We're in between high pressure and low pressure at the moment. Weather fronts are tending to stay away, but there is a feature that's been bringing some heavy rain to Germany over the last couple of days, and that's just going to swing some cloud and outbreaks of rain into the far southeast and East Anglia overnight. And there'll be some low cloud drifting into eastern Scotland, northeast England. So grotty conditions first thing here on Saturday. Otherwise, further west, plenty of sunny spells. A fresh start, but soon enough, where we've got the sunshine, it will warm up quickly. Where we've got the low cloud, it's going to be slower to warm up. And we will have some showery rain first thing along the south coast into Kent, South Wales, perhaps into southwest as the morning goes on. Wales, northwest England, southwest Scotland, plenty of warm sunshine, but northeast England into eastern Scotland, low cloud and mist. Northern Scotland likewise. That will take some time through the morning to burn back to the beaches. Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud first thing. That will tend to break up and allow some sunny spells to come through as the day goes on. So, for the majority, it is looking like a fine day. There'll be some decent sunny spells, but there'll also be showers developing as temperatures rise. The odd shower for Wales, central and northern England, central Scotland as well, particularly over the Highlands. But the most frequent showers are likely towards the southwest. Devon, Cornwall, Dorset, Somerset could see some heavy downpours continuing into the evening, dying away overnight. So a dry start to the day on Sunday. A lot of cloud first thing, particularly in the north and the east. But quickly, there are some very pleasant, warm, sunny spells developing through the morning and into the afternoon. Again, there'll be showers, but they're most likely to focus towards the southwest. Similar conditions on Monday.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online. This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Telegraph now, and BAME, BIPOC, people of colour, ethnic minority, global majority. It's so hard to keep up with the correct racial euphemisms, as the National Trust are finding out, Nicholas.
National Trust under fire for changing ethnic minority to global majority. Again, another natural charity has come under fire. Just on the back of that story we had a few weeks ago, where Wildlife and Countryside Link was criticised for claiming that the countryside is racist. The British countryside is a colonial white space.
It is. I saw an oak tree with a pointy white hat on. So it's clearly in
yeah, well,
ridiculous. Apparently this language is no longer helpful, they've said here.
I'd say
and
it's quite...
They mean... Well, it just means it's no longer helpful for excluding old people. They need something, they need something new to filter out the people that can show off that they know the right words.
Yeah, well, why do they have to change the words all the time? It's like they had BAME, then they had BIPOC, then they had ethnic minority, then they had global majority.
I think we
it's
know
like,
why, Leo. It's because they're inclusive, which we all know means exclusive. So you have to keep up with the word.
All these people in DEI departments or DEI hires on fat salaries somehow have to justify their existence. But it's like when your website of your bank decides to, change the shape and the format and the layout. But more serious than that, they have been criticized for having switched from ethnic minority to global majority. This has been called divisive, patronizing, and all that. But maybe inadvertently they've done something good, because I, for one, have repeatedly said that white people are a global minority, and therefore they deserve protection and preservation, not least in their own ancestral homeland. So it's about time we wake up and decide that white people are being replaced in their own homelands, and something needs to be done about it.
Well, of course, a lot of people, in the Green Party and whatever would say, yeah, but that's a good thing. So
but
yeah,
they can be preservationists, right? We are, after all, even in the field of conservation and preservation.
Yeah.
And what is most worthy of preservation than the race that has created all the civilization and the television on which we are appearing right now?
There was a Scottish man. A Scottish man
exactly.
invented the television. I think that was the last good thing a Scottish person did. Anyway, we've got the Sun now, and if you don't like your body, doctors can give you Ozempic or liposuction, and now one doctor can give you a completely new body, Cressida.
Excellent. Maverick surgeon wants to transplant living human head onto a dead body. It's just, what can you say? It's terrifying. After critics in the US objected to his plan to graft a living human head onto the body of a recently deceased donor, Italian neurosurgeon Sergio Cannavaro, am I saying it right? Cannavero, thank you. Moved to China, but then his volunteer fell in love. I don't really see what that's got to do with it. This person had a terrible disease, but then two things happened. The disease halted and they learned to cope with their symptoms, that it wasn't getting any worse. But it also says this person fell in love and got married. Now, why would that stop you
Well, because it was a risky operation.
Yeah,
so now you've got something more to live for.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to. I think if you're a single man, you might be like, yeah, why not take my head off and graft it onto somebody else's dead body? But if you've got a wife, she's probably going to be like, listen. This idea you had in the pub with your mates of like having your head
spoiling
grafted.
all the fun. I love that. Brilliant. Well, anyway, he's been trying. Apparently, people have done this in other. They've put another head on a dog, and that lasted for 2 weeks.
And monkeys as well. So
they weren't human heads, though I should point out. And apparently with the dogs, it was quite successful. One of the grafted-on heads tried to bite a doctor. So.
I think that's fair. Yeah. If you'd put a second head on me, I'd be a bit nippy.
Yeah. Well, what's the second head? Well, the first head didn't seem to mind so much. But yeah, they've done head transplants in over 30 rhesus monkeys. They were sort of successful, which isn't the kind of language I want to hear when I'm going into surgery, and that the monkeys lived for a couple of weeks. I mean, I'd really want to live for a bit longer than that.
Yeah, but even if you look at the seismic watershed moment, the first ever human heart transplant, the person didn't live that long. Right, but it was a watershed moment, and this is stuff of nightmares. I hope people are watching it on the 5 o'clock repeat show. Yeah, but it has been done with monkeys. It has been done with.
And it's called the Heaven procedure.
And also, you could get some muscly guy who looks brilliant in speedos and stuff, and then you get your head on his body, and you've got a whole new.
Like in Bridget Jones' Diary, she cuts her head out and puts it on Kate Moss's body on the fridge. Brilliant.
Yeah, that's surgery in 2024. Moving on, we've got The Guardian now with a story about baby names. Is Mohammed the most popular one, Nicholas?
Mohammed has been the second most popular one, but on some months it has been the most popular one.
Right. And I think it's got different spellings.
Exactly.
So if you had together all the different spellings, then it is the most popular one, which is fantastic because it means Britain's diverse, which is a strength.
Which means I would disagree with that, but it shows the great replacement is happening.
Well, you'd be wrong. It's a scientific formula. Diversity equals strength. Everybody knows that.
Well, tell that to people in Baltimore or Yugoslavia. But
I was very surprised to see this name here, Leo.
Leo
you're the only one I know.
It's a nice name.
Well, yeah, when I was at school, I was the only. Trust me, in a school in Scotland, I was the only Leo. You know what I mean?
yeah, not in Scotland probably. There's also a geographical distinction here. But let me read the title to basically have fulfilled my contractual obligation. Olivia and Noah still most popular baby names in England and Wales. So the idea is not much has changed year to year. So we have Olivia. I have a problem with this. You write it in English country. Amelia, but some people read it Emilia. Yeah. Okay, I'm a fan of standard Emilia, starting with E. Then you have Isla, then you have Ava, which is supposed to be Ava.
I would say Ava, again, yes.
Yeah. But then we have more European names coming in, like Nova for girls and Luca, Leo for
Vauxhall
boys.
Nova was a British car.
Pardon?
It was a British car.
Yeah, but it's very popular in Scandinavia.
Oh, really?
And
yeah,
that's where
it's very well there.
That's where it's coming up. And
I think corners very well.
It hasn't been mentioned here, but for the second decade consecutively, the least popular name for boys is Gaylord.
Well, as long as there's some Gaylords getting through. Anyway, we've got the Telegraph now, and Eddie Izzard says he won't play any straight female roles, which is a shame because he'd make a great Pat Butcher. Cressida.
Eddie Izzard interview. I won't play a straight female role. It would be taking from others. Well, that's
also, you look like a man. I mean, that's the real issue, isn't it?
He is strong and beautiful. She is strong and beautiful. Look, very
she,
much like yours. Yes, she. So the comedian plans to play every character in Hamlet, dismantle the myth of masculinity, and win a seat at the next election. That's so Eddie Izzard, isn't it? Well, it's like 40,000 marathons in a week. What are you going to do? I'm going to do all the roles in Hamlet and then I'm going to become a politician. Oh, OK. So this is a kind of a little jaunt through Eddie/Susie's life. Susie has teamed up with her brother, Mark, who's adapted Shakespeare's longest tragedy into a 2.5-hour solo show in which Izzard plays not only the Dane, but also his mother, his lover and every other role too. Which does sound a bit narcissistic. But on the other hand, I mean, you get...
a narcissistic trans person. It's never happened before.
And a stand-up comedian, so...
Right. Exactly. Well, good luck to her. I mean, it sounds like a lot of work.
Her, you bigot. Nicholas, what do you make of this?
Well, I mean, isn't acting, at the end of the day, about performing as someone you are not. I mean, it's nice of him that he has decided not to steal a role from other women. But we know a lot of comics, a lot of actors and actresses have got, beef because why are you voicing a black person but you are not black in Family Guy cartoon series in the US? Why aren't you Jewish but you're acting as someone who is Jewish? And so all that. I think we need to put that to rest and just go for the person who is the most suitable. And
I'd like to say, as a proud trans woman, I am still willing to be cast in female roles. So, if somebody wants to put me as the love interest opposite Tom Cruise or something, I think I'd be great. And
you were cast in a rather ambiguous role in the song "I'd Like to Marry Gary."
There was nothing ambiguous about that. It was very stunning and brave. Anyway, that's this section finished, but join us for our final portion of the craziest news in tomorrow's papers with miracles, aliens, robot dogs and a beetle called Hitler. See you in a couple of minutes.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sam Richardson is a singer-songwriter from St Agnes in Cornwall. Much of his music reflects a sense of frustration with life in a coastal town.
We've got a lot of empty shops in a lot of our town centres, which is sort of causing a lot of death on the high street. I know that's a problem everywhere.
Similar problems across the border in Devon. Ilfracombe is the most deprived area in North Devon. Twice the town has applied for levelling up funding. Twice it's been turned down, something North Devon MP Selene Saxby says is frustrating.
It's very complicated. It's not as straightforward as just throwing money at the problem. They're very deep issues.
For several years, the government has acknowledged that rural areas need extra help, but so far that help doesn't stretch to our coasts. The MP for St Austell and Newquay is pushing the government to change all this.
Truly local people are finding it really challenging because we often have sort of low-wage seasonal work, but very high house prices pushed up because of second homes and holiday lets, etc. And also, I think the disparity review that Theresa May carried out when she was Prime Minister highlighted that working-class white boys in coastal communities are some of the most disadvantaged people in the country.
Struggling to get on the housing ladder, struggling to find work, struggling to be heard.
It's interesting that a member of the party that's in the government recognises that, which is great, because it is a really important thing. But that government, for the last 10 years, has also cut £500 million in youth services around the country.
No one thinks the problem of coastal deprivation can be solved overnight. The issue of disaffected young white males even harder.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the final section of Headliners. We've got the Mail now, and the Vatican has announced new rules for authenticating miracles. Cressida.
Vatican announces new rules to authenticate miracles. The Vatican has radically reformed its process for evaluating alleged visions of the Virgin Mary, weeping statues, and so on. Nowadays they're saying word about apparitions or weeping Madonnas travels quickly and actually can cause harm to the faith if hoaxers are trying to make money off people's beliefs. So I think they're saying the internet has caused a problem. Having said that, they believe in the old ones from 1500 and something. I don't quite know why they justify those. And also, miracles are very good for business. They get more people converting if there's been a miracle.
Really?
Yeah, well, I think there has been a proliferation of these sightings or miracles or people who have claimed that, yeah, I've seen the stigmata or I've seen the weeping statue, I've seen the apparition of Mary. So the church is taking a more, how can I put it? Selective, or rather, they're, to use a Christian metaphor, they're maybe washing their hands off in a way, because the criteria is going to be...
They're washing their hands and their hands are coming off. They're washing their hands so hard.
Washing their hands off, by that I mean they're going to say, we are going to evaluate these cases, and it is not required for us to say, okay, this is definitely a miracle, but we are going to issue what is called nihil obstat, it's Latin term obviously, non-committal doctrinal green light, which means there's nothing about the event that is contrary to the faith, and therefore Catholics can express devotion to it, but we are not going to openly declare this as a miracle. Okay? Right. So, for example, there's this place in Bosnia, where I've been actually, Medjugorje, where there has been a sighting of an apparition of Mary. So the church hasn't recognized it, but hasn't also expressed itself against the pilgrimage that actually does happen, because it's very close also to Croatia. A lot of tourists go there.
So you can still sell more fridge magnets, even without the church.
Where would fridge magnets be without miracles? Also, how big are Catholic fridges? That'd be pretty big. The Mail now, and I didn't know this about the Beatles, but apparently one of them was named after Hitler, Nicholas.
Yeah, this is a fascinating story on so many levels. Brown beetles must be called Hitler. Zoological experts refuse request to change the name of bug named after Adolf in 1937. So I don't know if you remember, a few weeks ago, the Ornithological Authority in America started renaming a lot of birds that were named after Confederate generals, because apparently they also had this hobby of going and sighting birds and bird watching, and obviously I think it's a stupid decision. Here we have an authority...
It's a lovely hobby.
Exactly. Even though the person was a Confederate general, but let's not go down that road. But it's a similar context, because here we have this authority which is called...
the Commission on Zoological Nomenclature.
Exactly, thank you very much. This is a beetle discovered in the 30s in then Yugoslavia, now Slovenia. And it was discovered by a local person, and the local person communicated this discovery to an Austrian expert who turned out to be a fan of Hitler, who also in the process...
Big picture of Hitler on the wall.
Probably. Became the Chancellor of Germany.
He's like, finally!
That's exactly the story. He communicated this to the new Chancellor, Hitler, and said, as a sign of my dedication, I'm going to name this after you.
Hitler didn't read any Kafka.
Hitleri.
Yeah.
Anophthalmos Hitleri was named after him. And in the recent years, there has been a pilgrimage and actually a danger to the habitat of this creature, the beetle. And Hitler turns out also to be a fan of beetles, because he commissioned Volkswagen Beetle, no less.
No way, which was based on... they originally wanted 6 legs to come out and move that car instead of 4 wheels.
Well, I can't confirm that, but what...
Anyway, we've got the Mail now, and Jesus Christ, we've got 2 alien stories, Nicholas. Actually, that would have made sense if we did the story that was... They'd taken a story out, I had a thing, that referenced the story before... Anyway, it doesn't matter. Do either of them. I mean, we've just done one about beetles, so why not do... Wait, so let's fit both in. Let's quickly cover both of the alien stories. They're very important.
OK, so we go with Chris.
Fine. We're going with the Express. Story 17. Huge scientific breakthrough discovers alien power plants may be drawing energy from stars. Ones in the sky, not just the ones you can watch on Netflix. Hypothetical Dyson spheres are large and complex structures designed to draw energy from stars. And scientists have been studying this and discovering that alien plants... I mean, how do you do that? How do you find out that aliens are drawing energy from stars? That is...
You make it up. It's
Well,
a slow
I'm
news
glad
day.
you
I mean,
said that.
well, other stuff was happening, but for some reason they decided to write about, made up stuff about aliens. But there's also apparently proof aliens exist, Nicholas. Federal agencies must now deliver all UFO reports for public disclosure, including classified material, in 7 seconds.
This is a friction between Pentagon, who came up with this strange report saying, no, we have had no access to extraterrestrial technology, and now the Statistics Agency, National Archives Agency says, no, according to the law, you should come up and disclose all of your evidence.
OK, well, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Saturday's front pages. The Daily Mail has Hunt warns families face £2,100 bill to pay for Labour spending. The Telegraph has landlords face rent caps under Labour. The Guardian has revealed alcohol abuse costs soar to £27 billion a year. The Times has protection for teachers' free speech on religion. The iNews has benefit system insiders reveal how targets are used to decide disability claims. And finally, the Daily Star has very, very hungry caterpillars go on the rampage. I don't know if they're going to meet any of those beetles. And those were your front pages. And that's it for tonight's show. Thank you to Cressida and Nicholas. Headliners is back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Steve, N. Allen, Lewis Schaefer and Paul Cox. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Plenty of warm, sunny spells this weekend, but it won't be sunny or indeed dry everywhere. There'll be some cloud development, there'll be some showers here and there. We're in between high pressure and low pressure at the moment. Weather fronts are tending to stay away, but there is a feature that's been bringing some heavy rain to Germany over the last couple of days, and that's just going to swing some cloud and outbreaks of rain into the far southeast and East Anglia overnight. And there'll be some low cloud drifting into eastern Scotland, northeast England. So grotty conditions first thing here on Saturday. Otherwise, further west, plenty of sunny spells, a fresh start, but soon enough, where we've got the sunshine, it will warm up quickly. Where we've got the low cloud, it's going to be slower to warm up, and we will have some showery rain first thing along the south coast into Kent, South Wales, perhaps into southwest as the morning goes on. Wales, northwest England, southwest Scotland, plenty of warm sunshine, but northeast England into eastern Scotland, low cloud and mist. Northern Scotland, likewise. That will take some time through the morning to burn back to the beaches. Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud first thing. That will tend to break up and allow some sunny spells to come through as the day goes on. So, for the majority, it is looking like a fine day. There'll be some decent sunny spells, but there'll also be showers developing as temperatures rise. The odd shower for Wales, central and northern England, central Scotland as well, particularly over the Highlands. But the most frequent showers are likely towards the southwest. Devon, Cornwall, Dorset, Somerset could see some heavy downpours continuing into the evening, dying away overnight. So a dry start to the day on Sunday. A lot of cloud first thing, particularly in the north and the east. But quickly, there are some very pleasant, warm, sunny spells developing through the morning and into the afternoon. Again, there'll be showers, but they're most likely to be focused towards the southwest. Similar conditions on Monday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. Tonight we've got a cracking show. We've got Stephen Pound back on the show for about the 10th time. Sir Vince Cable, former leader of the Liberal Democrats, is back on the show. Political commentator, third time on the show, that's Chloe Dobbs. We've got the former political editor of the Sun newspaper, Trevor Kavanagh, and reality TV star, Precious Muir. But first, let's go to the news.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 7 o'clock. I'm Sam Francis. A look at the headlines at this hour. Israel's Prime Minister says the deaths of 3 hostages whose bodies have been recovered from Gaza are heartbreaking. The Israeli Defense Forces say that they were discovered overnight but didn't give details of where the bodies were found. All 3 hostages had been attending the Nova Music Festival in southern Israel when it was attacked by Hamas on October the 7th. Among them was the German-Israeli woman, 22-year-old Shani Luke. A photograph of her twisted body on the back of a pickup truck had circulated across the world following the attacks in October. Here, a terrorist who murdered a 70-year-old man in Hartlepool and said he did it for the people of Gaza has been sentenced today to at least 44 years in jail. Ahmed Ali Alid repeatedly stabbed Terence Carney in Hartlepool town centre last October, 8 days after the Hamas attacks inside Israel. The 45-year-old is an asylum seeker who claimed to be from Morocco. This evening, Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says his conviction exposes what she's called an alarming catalogue of failings in the Home Office's handling of his claim to asylum. In other news, a teacher convicted of having sex with 2 schoolboys, becoming pregnant by one of them, has been described as a predator. 30-year-old Rebecca Jones was found guilty of 6 counts of engaging in sexual activity with a child. She denied having sex with one schoolboy and claimed a relationship with a second teenager began only once he had left school and after she had been sacked. During her 2-week trial, the high school teacher told the court that she craved attention and struggled following the breakdown of a 9-year relationship. Well, to Devon now, where there is no word at this stage on how long residents in Brixham will have to boil their water after an outbreak of disease. 16,000 homes and businesses there have been told that a parasite has got into supplies of water after potential contamination from cow manure. South West Water is now offering bottled water to residents and has increased compensation from £15 to now £115. Passengers are set to face disruption at Heathrow Airport over half-term as hundreds of Border Force officers go on strike. 500 members of the PCS union will walk out for 3 days from the 31st of May in a dispute over their rotas. It's expected the strike action will disrupt passport checks for travellers coming into the UK. The British Museum says that it's recovered hundreds of items that had gone missing or that people had stolen. 268 pieces, including classical Greek and Roman gems and jewellery, have been returned. It brings the total number of items now found across the world to 626, out of around 1,500 missing or stolen items in total. Some, located as far as North America, have now been taken back to be housed in the museum's London collection. In the US, world #1 golfer Scottie Scheffler has been charged with multiple offences. Court records there show that Scheffler had been booked on 4 charges, which included second-degree assault of a police officer. The Masters champion was handcuffed on his way to the PGA Championships this morning, but he was able to arrive on